I started learning English when I was in primary school. It was a time when everything was new and exciting, and every day brought something different to learn. English was introduced to us as just another subject, like math or science. At first, I didn't know what to expect. I thought it might be easy, like learning to count or memorizing the names of animals. But soon I realized that English was different. It wasn't just about remembering facts. It was about learning a whole new way to speak and understand the world. In those early days, our teacher began with the basics. We started with simple words, the kind of words that describe everyday things we see around us. I remember the first English words I ever learned: cat, dog, and apple. They were short and simple, but they were also strange and unfamiliar. The way the letters came together to form sounds felt odd in my mouth. When I tried to say them out loud, they didn't always come out right. My tongue would trip over the words, and sometimes I would mix them up entirely. Our teacher would write the words on the chalkboard in big, clear letters. She would point to the pictures of a cat, a dog, and an apple, and then she would say the words slowly, making sure we could hear every sound. We would repeat after her, trying our best to mimic her pronunciation. Some of my classmates picked it up quickly, but for me, it wasn't that easy. The sounds were different from the ones I was used to in my own language, and it took a lot of practice to get them right. At first, English felt like a puzzle with pieces that didn't quite fit together. The words were so different from the ones I spoke at home. I was used to the sounds and rhythms of my native language, and English seemed almost like a secret code that I had to crack. The more I tried to say the words, the more I realized how different they were. For example, the word cat looked simple, but when I said it, it sounded different from how I expected. The A in cat wasn't like any sound I knew, and the T at the end made my tongue feel heavy. Despite these challenges, I found learning English to be fun. Every new word was like a small victory, a new piece of the puzzle falling into place. Our teacher made the lessons interesting by using games and songs. We would sing songs in English, where the words were repeated many times, helping us remember them. Even though I didn't understand all the words, I enjoyed the rhythm and melody of the songs. They made learning feel less like work and more like play. There were also moments of frustration. I remember one day when we had to name pictures in our workbook. I looked at a picture of an apple and knew the word, but when I tried to say it, the word got stuck in my throat. It was as if my mind knew the answer, but my mouth couldn't follow. I felt embarrassed when my classmates said the words easily, while I struggled. But I didn't let that stop me. I practiced more at home, repeating the words over and over until they started to feel more natural. As we continued to learn, we were introduced to more words and simple sentences. We learned how to say, "This is a cat," and "That is an apple." Each new phrase was like adding another piece to the puzzle, slowly helping me see the bigger picture. It was hard work, but with each lesson, I could feel myself getting a little bit better. The words that once felt strange were starting to make sense, and I could say them with more confidence. Learning English in primary school was just the beginning of my journey, but it was a crucial time. It was when I first realized that learning a language takes time, patience, and a lot of practice. I didn't become fluent overnight, and there were many moments when I felt like I wasn't making any progress. But looking back, I can see that those early days were important. They taught me the basics, the foundation I would build on in the years to come. Even though it was challenging, those first experiences with English in primary school were filled with curiosity and a sense of discovery. Each new word was like opening a door to a new world, and I was eager to see where that world would take me. It was the start of a journey that would shape my future and help me achieve my big dream of learning English. As I grew older, learning English became more difficult. The simple words and phrases I had learned in primary school were no longer enough. Now the lessons focused on grammar, the set of rules that governed how words should be put together. I soon realized that grammar was the backbone of the language, and without understanding it, I wouldn't be able to speak or write English correctly. But these rules were complicated, and sometimes felt like a maze I couldn't find my way out of. In those days, every English class felt like a new challenge. We were introduced to concepts like verb tenses, subject-verb agreement, prepositions, and conjunctions. The list seemed endless. I remember when we first learned about verb tenses, how the same action could be expressed in the past, present, or future. For example, I eat became I ate for the past, and I will eat for the future. It sounded simple at first, but when we started practicing with different verbs, I quickly got confused. There were irregular verbs that didn't follow the usual patterns, and they were especially tricky for me. I struggled to keep up with all the new information. It felt like every time I thought I understood something, a new rule would come along and complicate things. For instance, I learned that in English, the verb often changes depending on whether the subject is singular or plural. So, he eats was correct, but they eat was correct too, even though it was the same verb. These little differences tripped me up constantly. I would often mix them up when I tried to speak or write. Then there were prepositions, those small words like in, on, at, and by, which seemed so innocent but were actually full of challenges. Choosing the right preposition felt like a guessing game. Should I say in the car or on the car? At school or in school? Each preposition had its own specific use, and it wasn't always logical. I often found myself making mistakes, and it was frustrating because even a small error could change the meaning of a sentence. Another tricky part was learning about conjunctions like and, but, or, and because. These words were used to connect sentences or ideas, and using them correctly was important to make my sentences clear. But again, it was easy to get them mixed up, especially when I was trying to speak quickly or write something down in class. As we covered more grammar rules, I started to feel overwhelmed. There were so many rules, and it seemed impossible to remember them all. The more I learned, the more I felt like I was getting lost in a sea of words and structures. My confidence began to waver. Sometimes I would freeze up when I tried to speak in class, afraid of making a mistake and getting corrected. It felt like I was never going to get it right, and that was discouraging. But even though I was struggling, I knew I couldn't give up. I reminded myself of my dream, the reason I started learning English in the first place. I knew that if I wanted to achieve my goals, I had to keep going, no matter how hard it was. So I decided to take a different approach. Instead of feeling frustrated by the challenges, I tried to see them as opportunities to learn and improve. I started by asking my teacher for extra help. After class, I would stay behind to ask questions about the things I didn't understand. My teacher was patient and explained the rules to me in a way that made more sense. She also gave me additional exercises to practice at home, which helped reinforce what I had learned in class. The more I practiced, the more the rules began to stick in my mind. I also turned to English cartoons for help. Even though I was older, I found that cartoons were a great way to learn because they used simple language and clear pronunciation. The characters often repeated the same phrases, which helped me memorize them. At first, I couldn't understand everything they said, but I didn't let that discourage me. I focused on picking up new words and phrases, writing them down, and trying to use them in sentences. It was slow progress, but it was progress nonetheless. Little by little, I began to see improvement. The grammar rules that had once confused me started to make more sense. I could form simple sentences with more confidence and fewer mistakes. I began to understand more of what I heard in English, whether it was on TV, in a song, or during a conversation. Each small victory gave me the motivation to keep going. One day, I realized that I was able to follow along in class without feeling completely lost. I could understand the teacher's instructions and even answer questions without hesitating too much. I still made mistakes, but I didn't let them bother me as much. I knew that making mistakes was part of the learning process, and as long as I was learning from them, I was on the right track. As I continued to practice and study, English started to feel less like a maze and more like a path that I could navigate. It wasn't always easy, but I was beginning to see the results of my hard work. The challenges I faced along the way didn't disappear, but I learned how to face them with a positive attitude and a willingness to keep trying, no matter what. There were times during my journey of learning English when I wanted to quit. I had started with so much enthusiasm, but as the challenges grew, so did my doubts. I had always imagined that learning a new language would be exciting and maybe even fun. But the reality was different. Learning English was harder than I had ever thought it would be. The grammar rules were confusing, the pronunciation was difficult, and I often felt like I was making no progress at all. It was easy to get discouraged, especially when I compared myself to others who seemed to pick it up so quickly. I remember many nights sitting at my desk, staring at my English books, feeling overwhelmed. The words seemed to blur together, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't seem to get them to stick in my mind. Sometimes I would get frustrated and close my books thinking, maybe I'm just not good at this. Maybe I'll never learn English. Those were the moments when quitting seemed like the easiest option. After all, why keep trying if it was so difficult? But every time I felt like giving up, I reminded myself of my dream. I remembered why I had started learning English in the first place. I wanted to be able to talk to people from other countries, to connect with them in their own language. I dreamed of traveling the world, visiting new places, and making friends with people from different cultures. I knew that English was the key to making that dream a reality. If I gave up now, I would be giving up on that dream, and that was something I wasn't willing to do. So, I decided to keep going, no matter how hard it was. I knew that if I wanted to achieve my goals, I needed to be patient and persistent. I realized that learning a language wasn't something that happened overnight. It was a journey that required time and effort. I had to remind myself that every small step forward was progress, even if it didn't feel like it at the time. To make the process more manageable, I set small goals for myself. I knew that trying to learn everything at once was overwhelming, so I broke it down into smaller tasks. One of the first goals I set was to learn 5 new English words every day. It didn't sound like much, but I knew that if I could learn 5 words each day, it would add up over time. I started carrying a small notebook with me wherever I went, and whenever I had a few minutes, I would open it up and review my words. I practiced saying them out loud, trying to get the pronunciation just right. I also tried to use the new words in sentences, even if they were simple ones like "the dog is big" or "I eat an apple." It wasn't always easy, and sometimes I forgot the words I had learned, but I kept at it. Another goal I set for myself was to start writing a diary in English. This was a big step for me because writing in English felt intimidating. I knew my writing wouldn't be perfect, and I was afraid of making mistakes. But I also knew that writing was one of the best ways to practice and improve. So, I bought a small notebook and decided to write in it every day. At first, I kept it simple. I wrote about my day, what I did, what I saw, and how I felt. The sentences were short and basic, like, "Today I went to school," or "I ate lunch with my friends." As I got more comfortable, I started writing about my thoughts and dreams. I wrote about my hopes for the future, my fears, and the things that made me happy. Writing in my diary became a daily habit. It was a safe space where I could practice without worrying about being judged. I knew that my writing wasn't perfect, but that was okay. The important thing was that I was practicing and learning. Over time, I noticed that my sentences started to get longer and more complex. I was able to express my thoughts more clearly, and I felt more confident in my ability to write in English. There were still times when I struggled and felt like I wasn't making progress, but I kept reminding myself of my dream. Every time I felt like giving up, I would think about the places I wanted to visit, the people I wanted to meet, and the conversations I wanted to have in English. That vision kept me going, even on the toughest days. As I continued to practice and work towards my goals, I began to see the results of my efforts. My vocabulary grew, my pronunciation improved, and my writing became more fluent. I wasn't fluent in English yet, but I was getting closer every day. And most importantly, I was learning not to give up, no matter how difficult the journey was. Looking back, I realized that those moments when I wanted to quit were actually the moments that made me stronger. They taught me the importance of perseverance and the value of hard work. Learning English wasn't just about mastering a language. It was about building character, developing resilience, and proving to myself that I could achieve anything I set my mind to. One day, something incredible happened that changed everything for me. It was a day like any other, and I was sitting in my living room, flipping through the channels on the TV. I came across a show in English that I had watched many times before, but this time, something felt different. As I watched, I noticed that I was understanding more than I ever had before. The characters were speaking in English, as always, but now, instead of just catching a few words here and there, I could follow most of what they were saying. I sat up straight, focusing intently, and as the scenes unfolded, I realized that I was actually understanding the dialogue. This moment filled me with a sense of joy and accomplishment that I had never felt before. All the hard work I had put in, the hours spent memorizing vocabulary, practicing pronunciation, and writing in my diary, were finally starting to pay off. I felt like I had unlocked a new level in my English learning journey, and it was exhilarating. It was as if a door had opened, allowing me to step into a world where English was no longer a foreign language, but something I could understand and use. That day was a turning point for me. I felt a surge of confidence that I had been missing before. Understanding the TV show was more than just a small victory. It was proof that I was improving, that all my efforts were making a difference. This newfound confidence made me want to use English more in my everyday life, and I began looking for opportunities to practice. One of the first things I did was start using English in real-life situations. I remember going to a restaurant and deciding to order my food in English. My heart was pounding as I approached the counter, rehearsing my order in my head. When it was my turn, I took a deep breath and spoke in English. "Can I have a cheeseburger, please?" I asked. The words came out smoothly, and the person behind the counter understood me without any trouble. It was a small interaction, but it felt like a huge achievement. For the first time, I was using English in a practical way, and it worked. Encouraged by this success, I started using English more often. I would ask for directions in English when I was out and about, even if I knew the answer already. I figured that every opportunity to speak English was a chance to practice and improve. At first, it was nerve-wracking. I was worried about making mistakes or not being understood. But with each interaction, I grew more confident. I learned that most people were patient and understanding, and they didn't mind if I made a few errors. What mattered was that I was trying, and with each attempt, I was getting better. The more I practiced, the more noticeable my progress became. My pronunciation, which had once been a major challenge for me, started to improve. I spent a lot of time listening to English speakers and repeating what they said, mimicking their intonation and rhythm. Slowly but surely, the awkwardness I had felt when speaking English began to fade. My words started to flow more naturally, and I found myself speaking with greater ease and confidence. Another thing I noticed was that I was becoming more fluent. The words and phrases that had once felt clumsy in my mouth were now coming to me more quickly. I didn't have to think as hard about what I wanted to say. The sentences just formed themselves in my mind, and I could speak without hesitating as much. Of course, I still made mistakes. There were times when I used the wrong word or mixed up my grammar, but I didn't let those mistakes bother me as much anymore. I knew that making mistakes was part of the learning process, and each one was an opportunity to learn and improve. As my confidence grew, I started to push myself even further. I began having longer conversations in English, both with my teachers and with friends who spoke the language. These conversations weren't always easy, but they were incredibly rewarding. I was able to express my thoughts more clearly and understand more of what others were saying to me. It felt like I was finally becoming the English speaker I had always wanted to be. I also started challenging myself to read more in English. I picked up simple books and magazines, and even though it was slow going at first, I found that with practice, I was able to understand more and more. Reading in English not only helped me improve my vocabulary, but it also exposed me to different ways of using the language. I learned new expressions, idioms, and ways of phrasing things that I hadn't encountered before. It was like discovering a whole new side of the language, and I loved it. Looking back, I realized that the progress I was seeing wasn't just about learning English, it was about all the little victories along the way. Each time I understood a sentence, ordered food, or had a conversation in English, I was reminded of how far I had come. The journey hadn't been easy, but it was those challenging moments that made the progress feel so rewarding. I knew I still had a lot to learn, but I was no longer daunted by the road ahead. I was excited to keep going, to keep improving, and to see just how far my English skills could take me. Seeing progress in my English learning journey wasn't just about reaching a goal, it was about the confidence and sense of accomplishment that came with it. Every step forward, no matter how small, was proof that I was capable of achieving my dreams. And with that belief, I knew that there was nothing that could stop me from becoming the English speaker I had always dreamed of being. As the years went by, my journey to learn English evolved into something much deeper and more meaningful than I ever could have imagined when I first started. It was no longer just about learning a new language. It had become an integral part of who I was. My initial struggles with grammar and vocabulary felt like a distant memory, replaced by a growing fluency and confidence that I had worked so hard to achieve. I could see how far I had come, and it filled me with a sense of pride and accomplishment. One of the biggest milestones in my journey was when I decided to take advanced English classes. By this point, I had a solid foundation in the language, but I wanted to push myself further. I wanted to master English, not just as a way to communicate, but as a tool that could open up new doors for me. These advanced classes were challenging, but they were also incredibly rewarding. We dove into complex topics like advanced grammar, literature, and even creative writing. The lessons were more intense, but I was ready for them. I found myself fascinated by the nuances of the language, the way words could be woven together to create meaning and emotion. In these classes, I was also introduced to a wide range of English literature. I began reading books in English, something that once seemed impossible. At first, it was slow going, and I had to look up many words in the dictionary. But with each book, my vocabulary grew, and I started to appreciate the beauty of the language in a whole new way. I read novels, short stories, and poems, each one expanding my understanding of English and deepening my love for it. The more I read, the more I realized that English wasn't just a language. It was a gateway to new ideas, cultures, and perspectives. Through my studies and my growing confidence, I began to meet and make friends who spoke English. These friendships were special to me because they represented a connection that went beyond just language. They were a testament to the progress I had made. I could now hold conversations with native English speakers without feeling nervous or out of place. We talked about everything, our interests, our cultures, our dreams, and I found that I could express myself clearly and confidently. These friendships enriched my life in ways I hadn't expected. I learned so much from my friends, not just about the language, but about their experiences and worldviews. In turn, I shared my own stories and perspectives with them, and I felt a sense of belonging that I had never experienced before. As I continued to improve my English, I began to see my dream coming true right before my eyes. English was no longer just something I studied in a classroom. It had become a part of my everyday life. I used it at work, at home, with friends, and even in my thoughts. It felt natural to speak, read, and write in English, and I knew that I had reached a level of fluency that allowed me to navigate the world with confidence. One of the most rewarding aspects of reaching my goal was the way it transformed my life. Learning English had always been a dream of mine, but I hadn't fully understood how much it would change my future. As my skills improved, so did the opportunities that came my way. For instance, being able to speak English fluently opened up new job opportunities for me. I was able to apply for positions that required strong English skills, and I found myself moving up in my career. I was offered a better job, one that not only paid more, but also allowed me to travel and interact with people from all over the world. English had become a key to unlocking a future I had always dreamed of. Beyond the professional benefits, learning English also enriched my personal life. I could now connect with people from different countries and cultures, broadening my social circle and making lifelong friends. I was able to travel more confidently, knowing that I could communicate wherever I went. Whether I was ordering food in a restaurant in a foreign country, asking for directions, or simply chatting with locals, I felt at ease because I knew I could rely on my English skills. This ability to connect with others on a global scale was one of the most fulfilling aspects of reaching my goal. In addition to the tangible rewards, there was also a deep sense of personal satisfaction. I had set out on this journey with a dream, and through hard work, determination, and perseverance, I had achieved it. The process of learning English taught me so much more than just a language. It taught me the value of persistence, the importance of setting goals, and the power of believing in myself. Every time I speak English, I am reminded of how far I have come and how much I have grown. Now, when I look back on my journey, I am filled with gratitude. I am grateful for the challenges I faced because they made me stronger. I am grateful for the people who supported me along the way, my teachers, my friends, and my family. And most of all, I am grateful for the dream that started it all, the dream that kept me going even when things were tough. Reaching my goal of learning English has been one of the most rewarding experiences of my life, and it has given me so much more than I ever expected. It has opened up a world of possibilities, and I know that whatever comes next, I am ready for it. When I take a moment to reflect on my journey, I am filled with a deep sense of pride and accomplishment. It's hard to believe how far I've come since those early days in primary school when English was just a collection of strange sounds and unfamiliar letters. Back then, learning English felt like climbing a mountain, steep, challenging, and at times overwhelming. But as I look back now, I realize that each step I took, no matter how small, was leading me to where I am today. This journey has been one of the most significant undertakings of my life, and it has taught me invaluable lessons that extend far beyond just language learning. In the beginning, I had no idea just how much perseverance and determination would be required to reach my goal. Learning English was anything but easy. There were days when the words seemed to jumble together, when the rules of grammar felt impossible to grasp, and when I questioned whether I would ever truly be fluent. But even on the hardest days, I never let myself give up. I knew that every challenge I faced was an opportunity to learn and grow. And so, I pushed forward, one word, one sentence, one conversation at a time. As I progressed, I encountered many obstacles that tested my resolve. There were moments of frustration where I felt like I was making no progress at all. I remember the countless times I stumbled over my pronunciation, the times I couldn't find the right word, or when I misunderstood something completely. It would have been easy to let these setbacks discourage me, to convince myself that English was simply too difficult to master. But I had a dream of speaking English fluently, of connecting with people from different cultures, and of exploring the world with confidence. That dream kept me going, even when the road ahead seemed impossibly long. One of the most important lessons I learned on this journey is that mistakes are not something to fear, but something to embrace. In the beginning, I was terrified of making mistakes. I worried that people would judge me or that I would embarrass myself. But over time, I realized that making mistakes was an essential part of the learning process. Each mistake was a stepping stone, a chance to correct myself and do better next time. The more mistakes I made, the more I learned, and the more confident I became. I began to see mistakes not as failures, but as opportunities to improve. Practice became my best friend. I practiced every day, no matter how busy or tired I was. Whether it was repeating new vocabulary words, watching English shows, writing in my diary, or having conversations with friends, I made sure that English was a part of my daily routine. This consistent practice was the key to my progress. It wasn't always easy to find the time or motivation, especially when I didn't see immediate results. But I knew that every bit of practice was bringing me closer to my goal. I learned that there are no shortcuts when it comes to learning a language. It requires time, effort, and above all, patience. As I look back, I also recognize the importance of the support I received along the way. My teachers, friends, and family all played a crucial role in my success. They encouraged me when I was struggling, celebrated my achievements, and provided me with the guidance and resources I needed to improve. Having people who believed in me and my ability to learn English made a world of difference. Their support reminded me that I wasn't alone on this journey, and that I had people who were rooting for me every step of the way. Now, after years of hard work and dedication, I can say with confidence that I have achieved my dream. English is no longer a foreign language to me. It is a part of who I am. I can speak fluently, understand complex ideas, and communicate with people from all over the world. The sense of fulfillment and pride that comes with this accomplishment is indescribable. I know that I wouldn't be where I am today if I had given up when things got tough. Every challenge I faced, every mistake I made, and every hour I spent practicing was worth it. I am proud of the progress I've made, and I am grateful for the journey that has brought me here. My advice to anyone who is learning English, or any other skill for that matter, is simple. Never give up. There will be times when it feels too difficult, when progress seems slow, and when you might doubt your ability to succeed. But remember that every small step you take brings you closer to your goal. Practice every day, even when it's hard, and don't be afraid of making mistakes. Mistakes are proof that you are trying, and trying is the only way to improve. Surround yourself with people who support and encourage you and believe in yourself and your ability to achieve your dream. Looking back on my journey, I am reminded that learning English wasn't just about mastering a language. It was about growing as a person. It taught me resilience, patience, and the power of perseverance. It showed me that with hard work and determination, anything is possible. And now, as I move forward, I carry these lessons with me, knowing that I am capable of achieving even the biggest of dreams. As I reflect on my journey to learn English, I realize that the path I traveled was filled with both challenges and triumphs. From the early days of struggling with simple words to the exhilarating moment of understanding a TV show in English, each step of the way was a testament to my dedication and hard work. Learning English was not just about acquiring a new skill. It was about embracing a dream and turning it into reality. I've learned that achieving a goal requires more than just talent or intelligence. It requires perseverance, practice, and the courage to face difficulties head-on. Even when English felt overwhelming, I kept moving forward, knowing that every effort brought me closer to my dream. The support from my teachers, friends, and family played a crucial role in this journey, reminding me that I was never alone in my pursuit. Today, as I look back, I am filled with a deep sense of accomplishment. English has become a natural part of my life, opening up new opportunities and allowing me to connect with people from around the world. The language that once seemed foreign and challenging is now a source of confidence and pride. For anyone on a similar path, my message is simple. Never give up. Every step you take, no matter how small, is progress. Embrace your mistakes as learning opportunities. Practice regularly, and believe in your ability to achieve your dreams. With perseverance and determination, you too can reach your goals and experience the joy of seeing your hard work pay off. Learning English has been one of the most rewarding experiences of my life, and it has taught me that the journey is just as important as the destination. Keep pushing forward, stay inspired, and remember that every challenge you overcome brings you one step closer to your dreams. The road may be long, but the rewards are well worth the effort.